Have you ever met someone who stepped into your life with the force of a thunderstorm, magnetic, overwhelming, and impossible to ignore? For a brief moment, it feels like the stars themselves aligned to bring the two of you together. You feel alive in a way you never thought possible, as if the universe whispered, "This is it, this is the one." But then almost as suddenly as it began, the connection unravels. It hurts. It shakes you to your core. And you're left staring at the pieces asking, why would the universe bring someone so powerful into my life, only to take them away? That haunting question has echoed in the hearts of countless people. And today we're going to dive deep into it through the lens of Jungian psychology and the timeless wisdom of mystics, philosophers, and modern psychology. What you'll discover is that the people you cannot keep might be the ones your soul needed the most. Because this isn't just another story about love. This is about you, about your shadow, your growth, and the hidden architecture of your psyche, the unseen forces that shape who you're drawn to and why. And before we go further, I want you to stay with me until the very end, because the final insight may just change the way you look at every relationship you've ever had. If you find meaning in exploring the deeper layers of life through psychology, philosophy, and timeless wisdom, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. The more seekers we reach, the more we grow together. Now think back for a moment. Is there someone you loved or thought you loved deeply, but it didn't work out? What if I told you that meeting them wasn't random at all, that their purpose in your story was never to stay, but to awaken? Carl Jung once said that every person we meet is a mirror, reflecting not only who we are, but more importantly, the parts of ourselves we don't yet see. He called this the shadow, the hidden unconscious aspects of our being that we repress, deny, or ignore. These short, intense, often painful connections. They're what Jungians call shadow activators. They stir up emotions inside you, desire, fear, hope, insecurity. They touch wounds you thought had healed, or reveal ones you never knew were there. They make you feel alive, but also unstable. So maybe the universe isn't sending you pain disguised as love. Maybe it's sending you revelation. When you meet someone who awakens your shadow, you're not just falling for them. You're falling into yourself. And those people, the ones who ignite something deep within you, they aren't meant to be your forever. They're meant to be your mirror. Have you ever been drawn to someone who felt like pure electricity? Someone who shook you to your core, but at the same time left you completely unsteady? It might have felt spiritual, even fated, as if destiny itself scripted your meeting. But here's the paradox: just because something feels destined doesn't mean it's meant to last. In Jungian psychology, this is called projection. It happens when we unconsciously place our hidden desires, fears, or unlived potential onto another person. In other words, you're not just seeing them, you're seeing yourself reflected back through them. That's why the pull feels so strong, almost supernatural. But the truth is, they've awakened something inside you that was waiting to be seen. Jungian analyst James Hollis once said, "The purpose of relationships is not happiness, it's transformation." And when you look at your own experiences through that lens, suddenly things begin to make sense. The universe isn't cruel for sending you someone you cannot keep. It's intentional. That person is there to break you open, not to destroy you, but to reveal you. Think about the heartbreaks you've endured. That devastating moment when everything collapsed wasn't an ending, it was an initiation. It was the beginning of your return to yourself. Because let's be honest, there are parts of us we'd never dare to confront on our own. We need the mirror of another person to show us the places where we're fragmented, wounded, or afraid. Heartbreak is the chisel. It carves your soul, forcing you to ask the questions you've avoided for years. Why do I give away my power, so easily crave validation from those who withhold it, and feel unworthy when someone doesn't choose me? And if you sit with those questions, not in blame, but with curiosity, you start to reclaim yourself. You realize this person didn't ruin you. They revealed you. But here's the challenge: many of us never see the lesson because we're too caught in the pain. We cling to the illusion that they were the one, when in reality, they were the catalyst. They weren't here to fulfill your fantasy, but to dissolve it so that something more authentic could be born. And that realization changes everything. You were never being punished. You were being initiated. So now let me ask you, has there ever been someone in your past who left, but in truth never really left? Not because of who they were, but because of who you were when you were with them. What part of yourself did they awaken? And are you still chasing the ghost of a lesson you haven't yet learned? What if the most intense relationships in your life weren't accidents at all, but sacred assignments? We often speak of fate, soulmates, and divine timing, yet rarely do we look beneath those words to see what they really mean. Carl Jung believed that the psyche is not only personal, it is also collective, shaped by what he called archetypes. These are universal patterns and symbols that live deep in the unconscious of every human being. The lover, the hero, the child, the wounded healer. These archetypes live within all of us. And when we enter relationships, these patterns awaken and collide. That's why sometimes when you meet someone, it feels like you've known them forever. They feel like home, even if their presence is chaotic. The chemistry feels cosmic, like it was written in the stars. But what you're really experiencing is an archetypal encounter. Your unconscious is saying, look here, this is where you've hidden something sacred. Many spiritual traditions describe this as a soul contract, the idea that before you were born, your soul chose to meet certain people, not always to keep them, but to learn something eternal from them. Jung himself never used those exact words, but his teachings point to the same truth. These encounters are not random, they are symbolic. They are rituals disguised as relationships. Here's the paradox, though. The stronger the archetypal pull, the more likely the relationship is to collapse under its own weight. Why? Because archetypes are larger than life. They belong to the realm of myth and symbol, not flesh and blood. When we project these vast archetypes onto real people, we stop seeing them. Instead, we see the fantasy, the rescuer, the redeemer, the one who will finally make us whole. But no human being can carry the weight of being someone else's salvation. That's why these relationships often burn bright and fade abruptly. They're not meant to last forever, they're meant to transform you. Psychologist Robert A. Johnson, a student of Jung, once wrote that falling in love is a kind of sacred madness. At first you see the divine in another person, but the real work begins when the projection fades, when the god or goddess you thought you were loving becomes human. At that point, the relationship either deepens into something authentic or dissolves, having already fulfilled its symbolic purpose. So let me ask you, what story were you trying to live through them? Was it the story of being rescued, of finally being chosen, of being seen as enough? And if that's the case, was it ever their role to give you that? Or was it always yours to claim? Because here lies the heart of the journey, reclaiming your projections, taking back the pieces of your soul you placed in someone else's hands. When you do, that heartbreak becomes sacred. Pain becomes a doorway, and you begin to see that the universe wasn't sending you punishment, it was giving you transformation. Why does it feel so real, so deep, so irreplaceable if it's not meant to last? That's the question so many of us wrestle with. And the answer lies in something I like to call your soul's curriculum. Not all love is meant to stay, but every love is meant to teach. The universe works through longing, through loss, through dreams and encounters that push you past the surface of who you think you are. Growth rarely happens when life is easy. Growth comes when something ruptures, when the ground beneath you cracks and forces you to rebuild from within. These soul-shaking relationships are accelerators. They strip away illusions, collapse old patterns, and pull you closer to your truest self. But only if you're willing to do the inner work. Jung taught that the path to wholeness, what he called individuation, requires a confrontation with the unconscious. And relationships, especially the ones that hurt, are one of the most powerful mirrors for that confrontation. Think about it, every love, every heartbreak, every trigger is a message from your deeper self. The person you couldn't keep wasn't a mistake. They were a messenger, not because they were perfect, not because you failed, but because your soul needed to remember something through them. And here's the critical piece: when the relationship ends, the lesson doesn't vanish. It stays with you, echoing inside your heart. The real question is, will you listen, or will you keep chasing another version of the same lesson, hoping the story plays out differently next time? This is the fork in the road we all face. One path leads to repetition, living the same relationship over and over again, different faces, same ending. The other path leads to transformation, stepping into awareness, breaking the cycle, and finally claiming your wholeness. So which one are you walking? Are you unconsciously replaying the past, hoping to rewrite it? Or are you ready to see the deeper message your soul has been whispering all along? Because when you realize that these connections are sacred assignments, not accidents, everything shifts. You begin to see heartbreak not as punishment, but as initiation. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and instead ask, "What is this trying to awaken in me?" And that shift, that one small change in perspective, has the power to rewrite your entire story of love. We often talk about love as if it's some mystery outside of us, something we stumble upon by luck, something that just happens. But what if love, especially the kind that wounds us, isn't random at all? What if every person you've been drawn to was a reflection of a deeper pattern inside you? Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That includes lovers, especially lovers. The people you can't seem to keep aren't accidents, they're messages. They're coded reflections of the parts of you waiting to be understood. Let's talk about patterns, why you keep attracting the same kind of person even when you swear you're looking for something different. Psychology tells us that much of our attraction comes not from conscious choice, but from the unconscious. Your ego, the part of you that thinks it's in control, might believe it knows what it wants. But beneath the surface lives the unconscious, a vast storehouse of memories, fears, wounds, and desires. It's in this hidden territory that your relational blueprint is formed. If early experiences of love were conditional, unsafe, or inconsistent, your inner child learned that love must be earned, chased, or feared. And unless that wound is healed, you'll unconsciously seek out relationships that replicate that dynamic, not because they make you happy, but because they feel like home. This is what attachment theory calls anxious or avoidant styles. Jung would call them complexes, clusters of emotional energy rooted in childhood. So when you meet someone who pulls you close, then pushes you away, it may not be fate playing tricks on you. It might be your psyche recreating an old story, desperately hoping for a different ending. But here's the truth, you can't rewrite the past by reenacting it. You can only heal it by facing it. These intense, fleeting relationships aren't punishments. They're opportunities. They reveal your blueprint. They shine a light on what you truly believe about love, about your worth, about yourself. Have you ever said to yourself, "I knew they weren't right for me, but I stayed anyway"? That's not weakness, it's your unconscious seeking redemption. It's the part of you that wants finally to be chosen, where once you felt abandoned. The question is, will you keep repeating that script or will you rewrite it? Here's where the turning point begins. When you finally become conscious of your patterns, something extraordinary happens. You reclaim your power. The story shifts. Instead of seeing the person who hurt you as the villain, you begin to see them as the mirror. Instead of blaming the universe for cruelty, you start to recognize its wisdom. Most importantly, you stop outsourcing your healing to other people. You no longer wait for someone else to give you the love, validation, or safety that your inner child has been craving. Instead, you begin the real work of integration, giving those things to yourself. This is the essence of Jung's idea of individuation, moving from projection to ownership, from victimhood to authorship of your own life. It's the realization that the love you've been chasing outside of yourself has always been the love you've withheld within. So how do you break the cycle? First, by becoming the observer. Watch your patterns without judgment. Ask yourself, why did I crave their attention so deeply? What emotions like fear, longing, or unworthiness did they stir? And what old story from my past were they unknowingly replaying? When you ask those questions with honesty, you begin to see the script you've been living, and once you see it, you can choose to release it. This doesn't mean you ignore your pain. It means you tend to it differently. Your inner child doesn't need another rescuer, it needs you. To see them, to hear them, to hold them, to validate the pain that's been carried for years. And yes, this process is not easy. It requires courage, it requires sitting in discomfort, but this is the work that makes you whole. Because here's the truth, the people you weren't meant to keep are not failures. They are initiators. They are earthquakes shaking the dust off your buried truths. They redirect your gaze inward, forcing you to meet the parts of yourself you once abandoned. In this light, heartbreak is not the end of love. It's one of its most transformative expressions. It strips away illusions. It softens the ego. It invites the soul to rise. Spiritual teacher Eckhart Tolle once said, "Relationships are not here to make you happy. They're here to make you conscious." Let that settle in, because once you understand this, everything about love and loss begins to take on a whole new meaning. There comes a moment after the heartbreak when the storm has passed and silence returns. The person is gone, the chaos has faded, and what remains is a lingering question. What do I do with this love that has nowhere to go? This is where the true transformation begins, because by now you've looked into the mirror of a relationship that didn't last. You've seen your projections, your wounds, your unconscious patterns. You've realized that the universe didn't send this person to complete you. It sent them to awaken you. But awakening alone is not enough. The next step is integration. Jung taught that the path to wholeness isn't about avoiding pain, but embracing contradictions, light and shadow, joy and sorrow, love and loss. Integration means making space for all of it without clinging or resisting. It means holding the truth that someone can feel like your soulmate and still not be meant to stay. It means understanding that love doesn't always arrive as a lifelong partner. Sometimes it arrives as a lesson, a threshold, a mirror. And the most profound act of healing isn't moving on, it's moving inward. Moving into yourself, into the parts of you that were activated by their presence. Because while the person may be gone, the parts of you they awakened remain. They are yours now, waiting to be acknowledged, loved, and reclaimed. This is how you take back your story, by becoming the one who provides the safety, compassion, and presence you once sought in them. By realizing that love isn't something someone else gives you, it's something you allow to flow through you. The relationship may have ended, but the love doesn't need to die. It can transform. It can become fuel for growth, a bridge to deeper self-knowledge, a prayer whispered into your own heart, I will no longer abandon myself in the name of love. Because here's the ultimate truth, the one you weren't meant to keep was never the destination. They were the doorway, a doorway that led you back to yourself. You didn't fail. You didn't waste your time. You didn't misread the signs. You lived a soul contract that fulfilled its purpose, and now that purpose is complete. So what does it mean when a soul contract is complete? It means you are free not just from the person, but from the illusion that love must look a certain way to be real. You are no longer chained to the story that your worth depends on, who stays or who leaves. Now you get to write a new story, a story where love is chosen from wholeness, not from hunger, where every connection is sacred even if it ends, where your heart is open not because you need someone to fill a void, but because you finally know how to hold yourself. This is the liberation Jung pointed to when he said that making the unconscious conscious is the key to wholeness. When you awaken to the truth of your patterns, you stop repeating them. You stop mistaking fate for choice. You stop confusing intensity with authenticity. And suddenly relationships begin to look different. You'll still meet people, some will stay, some will go, but the difference is you'll no longer confuse chemistry with truth. You'll recognize projection when it happens, and instead of acting it out, you'll bring it home. You'll understand that every soul you encounter is either love realized or love remembered. At that point, the questions that once haunted you begin to change. Instead of asking, was that real? You start asking, what did it reveal? Instead of wondering, why didn't they stay? You reflect on, what part of me was awakened? And perhaps most beautifully, you open your heart again. But this time, you're not opening it to be saved. You're opening it because you're whole enough to share, to give, to express the love that already lives inside you. So here's the shift. The person you couldn't keep was not a mistake. They were a messenger. They weren't there to complete your story. They were there to remind you that you are the author of it. And now that you know this, you carry something priceless, the freedom to love without losing yourself. So what does this freedom actually look like in your daily life? It means you'll still feel attraction, still feel longing, still feel the thrill of connection, but you won't mistake those feelings for destiny. You'll recognize that intensity doesn't always equal truth. This is where clarity begins to shine. When someone enters your life, you'll be able to ask, am I seeing them as they are, or am I seeing my own projection reflected back at me? That one question alone can save you from countless cycles of heartbreak. And here's the beauty: when projection does arise, and it will, you'll notice it. You'll catch yourself placing your unmet needs, your hidden desires, or your old wounds onto another person. And instead of trying to force them to carry that weight, you'll gently bring it home. You'll tend to it yourself. This is what it means to live from awareness instead of illusion. You begin to see every encounter not as punishment, not as random chance, but as an opportunity. Some people arrive as mirrors, some as teachers, some as companions, but all of them reveal something about you. That's why Jung taught that the work of individuation, the path to becoming whole, isn't about separating from others, but about integrating what they awaken within you. Every relationship, even the ones that end, becomes a thread in the fabric of your growth. And when you live this way, love transforms. It stops being about chasing completion. It becomes about expression. Instead of asking, who will finally make me whole, you ask, how can I share the wholeness I already carry? That shift changes everything. You'll notice less desperation, less grasping, less fear of loss. And in their place, you'll find presence, depth, and clarity. Because when you no longer confuse intensity with truth, you stop chasing ghosts. You stop running after the past. You begin to meet people as they really are, and you meet yourself fully in the process. There is a quiet moment that always follows heartbreak. The storm has passed, the noise has faded, and all that's left is stillness. In that silence, a question rises, who am I now without them? This is where the deepest work begins, not in forgetting, but in integrating. Jung taught that wholeness is not about choosing light over darkness or joy over grief. It's about holding both. Integration means making room for contradictions, knowing that love can be real even if it ends, that someone can feel like a soulmate, yet not be meant to stay. When you embrace this truth, you stop resisting reality. You realize that love does not always arrive in the form of forever. Sometimes it arrives as a threshold, a turning point, a mirror reflecting your own hidden self. And the act of healing isn't moving on, it's moving in, into your heart, into the places within you that their presence awakened. Because while the person may be gone, the parts of you they stirred remain. Those pieces are yours now, and they are asking to be loved by you. This is how you reclaim your power, by becoming the one who gives yourself the safety, compassion, and devotion you once sought outside. By recognizing that love isn't something someone else grants you, it's something that flows through you as naturally as breath. So let the love you once gave them transform. Let it become fuel for your growth. Let it become wisdom woven into your soul. Let it become a promise whispered to yourself, I will never again abandon myself in the name of love. Because the one you weren't meant to keep wasn't the destination, they were the doorway. A doorway that led you back to yourself. You didn't misread the signs, you didn't waste your time. You walked through a sacred contract and now its purpose is complete. And what you're left with is freedom. Freedom not just from a person, but from the illusion that love must last forever to be real. So what does this mean for your future? It means you'll keep meeting people. Some will stay, some will leave, but you'll no longer confuse intensity with truth. You'll no longer chase what triggers your wounds, mistaking it for love. You'll see projection when it happens and gently bring it home instead of acting it out. You'll understand that every soul you meet carries a purpose. Some are love realized, some are love remembered. And every encounter, no matter how brief, reveals something about who you are becoming. This is the essence of liberation. You stop asking, was that real, and instead ask, what did it reveal? You stop fearing endings because you know the end was never the end. It was always a beginning. And most importantly, you open your heart again. But this time it's not from emptiness. It's not from hunger. It's not because you need someone to complete you. You open it because you are whole enough to share. To give love not as a plea, but as an overflow. To connect not from lack, but from abundance. Think of it this way, the person you couldn't keep was never meant to define your story. They were the spark that lit a fire within you. A fire that now belongs to you to guide you forward. So I invite you to reflect. Who was the one you weren't meant to keep, but who changed everything? What did you learn not about them, but about yourself? What part of you was reborn the moment they walked away? If you feel called, share your story. Because your voice matters, your healing matters, and your journey might become the light for someone still lost in their storm. Remember, the universe is not cruel. It does not waste love. It uses it to shape you, to wake you, to lead you back home. So next time your heart breaks, don't ask, why is this happening to me? Instead, ask, what part of me is ready to emerge? And in that moment, you'll realize the truth. The end was never the end. It was the beginning of becoming who you were always meant to be.